I think my probability on AI destroys the world is probably something like 7%. People are actually just pretty excited about a post-AI future that is really amazing. And if we were to slow down AI successfully a lot, like maybe we don't get to that in our lifetimes. Comparing the last survey to this survey, I think there was a big movement in the direction of the alignment problem is important. Among people working on AI capabilities, a lot of them said they thought there was sort of more than 10% chance of an extremely bad outcome. Having a lot of the relevant scientists think that the technology they're working on is dangerous is like pretty helpful for regulating it in a useful way. Ultimately, I'm pretty excited about AGI, and I don't imagine that we would need to delay it for hundreds of years.
The Inside View. The Inside View.
The Inside View.
Katja, you run AI Impacts, a research project trying to incrementally answer decision-relevant questions about the future of AI. You aspire to save the world as much as you can, and your current guess is that AI forecasting is a place to do that. You're well known for a survey published in 2017 called When Will AI Exceed Human Performance? Evidence from AI Experts. And you recently just published a new survey of AI experts, which I'm really excited to talk about in this show. Thanks, Katja, for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So you're currently writing an answer to Scott Alexander. Can you explain who is Scott Alexander for people who don't know him?
He's a blogger. He writes about a wide variety of topics. He's a very good writer
What's his
and
blog?
a good thinker. Astral Codex 10 these days. It used to be Slate Star Codex.
And what is Astral Codex 10 about?
Well, sometimes artificial intelligence, it seems like.
Yeah, I think he now has something called ML, so Machine Learning Alignment Weekly.
Oh, really? Okay. I admit I'm not very up on reading blogs at the moment.
Oh. But you're still trying to answer one of his blogs.
Yes. This one seemed important.
So yeah, what's the blog you're answering?
He wrote a blog post about whether we shouldn't, or why we shouldn't maybe try and slow down artificial intelligence progress. I guess noticing that lately various people have been saying that maybe we should slow down AI progress if AI progress is a threat to the existence of humanity. And I guess he outlined some reasons you might not want to slow down AI progress.
What do we mean by AI progress here?
Yeah, I think it could mean a few different things. Like AI is very broad. I think the thing that is maybe a threat to humanity is a narrower kind of thing, sometimes called like artificial general intelligence or sort of more agentic AI or super intelligence. But basically something that's ultimately very powerful and probably somewhat agentic in the sense that it has goals and pursues them in the world. And I guess it's somewhat of an open question which AI progress is helpful toward that. But I think it would be plausible that you just want to slow down a fairly narrow set of AI progress that is leading that way.
So are you saying that basically making progress in AI in general might result in us building artificial general intelligence, and to not have this happen, we should just slow down AI in general?
Plausibly. I'm also saying that perhaps to not have that happen, you don't need to slow down AI in general, but just a subset of AI. It seems like an open question.
So, and I think this is kind of important because in the community, so we're part of the AI alignment community somehow, and effective altruism community. Sometimes people call it EA.
Yep.
And in this part of the world, people don't like to talk about slowing down AI progress. They prefer to try to accelerate research in AI alignment, solve technical AI alignment problems. So why do you think people have been tabooing slowing down AI progress for the past 15-ish years?
I think lately people have been more interested in talking about it, to be clear. In the longer term, I'm actually pretty unsure why it's been talked about so little. I think there is some sense that it's uncooperative, or also maybe just sort of fraught because like if you want to slow down AI progress, your goals are kind of contrary to some other people's goals, perhaps. And so that sort of thing is potentially political. And I think maybe this community is full of people who would rather do things that are not conflicty or political. It's probably one part of it. I guess I've talked to people a bit lately about why they've been not that interested in this kind of thing. And some answers that surprised me a little bit were just a sense that people want to be pro-technology. Like they do love technology, and it feels kind of bad to be on the side of anti-technology on some particular important technology.
Even more in the Bay Area, if you live in the Bay, it's pretty hard to be anti-tech.
Yeah. Or especially for people who sort of came to all this maybe being excited about AI or something, or like being excited about transhumanism or like the future being amazing. I think relatedly, another one that surprised me was the thought that like people are actually just pretty excited about a post-AI future that is really amazing. And if we were to slow down AI successfully a lot, like maybe we don't get to that in our lifetimes. And so it seems nicer overall if we could aim for a solution where, you know, we get to a future full of flourishing quite quickly with the help of AI, but also the AI is safe, and harder to aim for the AI being safe via like sacrificing our own ability to, you know, live long and healthy lives or that sort of thing that might be helped by AI.
Yeah, so are you basically saying that some people are older and or have longer timelines and think that if we slow down AI too much, there's like a small chance that they will achieve longevity or be able to, you know, live like hundreds of years, and so they're kind of pushing towards AGI sooner?
My guess is that's not like the main motive for why it hasn't been discussed more. But yeah, these are some things that I think are coming up for people.
Yeah, and I think so you shared with me some kind of draft of the post you're going to write as answering Scott Alexander, and in your draft you summarize the conversation between people who have been you know, very optimistic about AI alignment technical research 15 years ago, and it's kind of a discussion between like those people and people wanting to slow down things right now. I feel like the summary was kind of fun to me, but I don't know if you kind of remember the conversation, how it went.
Yeah, I think it was roughly something like, you know, 15 years ago, some people are like, oh man, AI, this sounds terrifying. We need to build like an even better AI that, you know, it needs to take over the world and also be like perfectly good. And onlookers are sort of like, wow, that sounds optimistic. But, you know, the people who are in favor of this are kind of like, yeah, but it's really important. Like the world is at stake, and, you know, there are many of us and we're pretty competent. Maybe we can do this, you know, it'll be great. And then after 15 years or something, they're like, this is pretty hard. And some of them are like, we give up. And then people are like, you know, what about this AI taking over the world and killing everyone, though? That sounds like a problem. Maybe we should try and, you know, not build that. And then I feel like a similar set of people are kind of like, whoa, that's, you know, like, yes, we think we can build an AI to take over the world. That's perfectly good. Like we're ambitious, but we're not like, you know, delusional. You think we can coordinate with China? That's not possible. And I guess I feel like there are just very different standards here for how sort of ambitious to be about these two different projects, or like how much of a sort of can-do attitude to have toward them.
Yeah, so I think another post by Scott Alexander is about fighting Moloch. So kind of this invisible hand of maybe, I don't know if it's about capitalism, but it is like humanity, like hand is like kind of doing bad things, but without actually having an agent doing it. And I feel some people in the community think that like fighting Moloch is harder than just like solving math equations. And so I think I kind of get what they mean, but I think it's kind of underappreciated how many things we can do in the political space to slow down things.
I think it also seems good to be clear on when things are Moloch, or what Moloch looks like exactly. Like I think in this case, if you think you're in the kind of extremal scenario where AI is very likely to destroy humanity, I think it's not in people's interest to build it for the most part, or like there may be corner cases where it is in their interests. But I think it's sort of an easier situation to make go well if it's actually just not in people's interest to do it.
How do we convey this message to governments?
Not really an expert on that sort of thing. I'm assuming governments are made of people, and that they're, open to the usual, talking and stuff like that. That's where I would start. But
Why do you think the, let's say, long-termist effective altruist community requires so much high standards in trying to come up with plans where we try to convince people that we should slow down AI progress, but they don't have the same high standards for, let's say, trying to build aligned AI. So we can say to people, oh yeah, try to build aligned AI, that might work. But whenever someone comes up with a plan to slow down progress, they're like, oh no, you shouldn't do this by yourself. Please have a much more rigorous plan for everything.
I think maybe one thing going on is that if your plan is going to have to involve interacting with a bunch of other people, it's easier for it to feel immediately like it's in normal reality where the normal rules of the genre apply. And so it doesn't seem very plausible that your efforts to coordinate will work or something. Whereas if it's a kind of project you can do by yourself in your room, it's easier to be really ambitious about it. I would guess, but yeah, this is really off the top of my head.
Right. So if it's something you can do by yourself, like writing a paper or solving some technical problem, it seems like progress you can do by yourself that most people do. But if it's something that never happened before and requires you to convince other people in the real world, that is seems more far-fetched.
I don't know if it's about whether it's happened before, but I'm thinking for instance, if I set out to try and solve the alignment problem in my room, I feel like I could get somewhat enthusiastic about it. And it's maybe the fact that no one's done it before isn't that much of a hindrance to my enthusiasm. But if you were like, hey, do you want to give a talk to the United Nations about this thing? Then whether or not this is going to seem ridiculous to people, it weighs more.
When is the Katja Grace talk to the United Nations?
It's not on the agenda.
Hopefully we can do another episode after you talk to them. Another thing you started writing about is the context of an arms race. So this happened with the Cold War and might happen again with AI. How do you spread the message that there's an arms race happening?
I think you mostly shouldn't spread the message that there's an arms race happening. So that's an easy communication problem, I guess.
So you don't talk about it. Rule number 1.
Well, I do. It seems like the first question, maybe you should talk about it. It seems like the first question is, are you actually in an arms race? It seems not obvious to me that the AI situation at present is an arms race or likely to be an arms race. I think in the sort of classic arms race scenario, it's not the case that when you win the arms race, you get destroyed. Right? So, in the very simplified version of this arms race, it's quite unlike a usual arms race. A usual arms race is a prisoner's dilemma, basically. And so you sort of always have an incentive to build more arms, regardless of what the other player does. But that's not true if you get killed in the end. Then you can build sort of more complicated models, and sometimes you should race, perhaps depending on the details of it, but often not.
Yeah, so I guess every time you build a new nuclear weapon, you increase your offensive power, your retaliation power against, I don't know, Russia or China. But you also increase the strength of the war, or the impact of the war if it happens.
Yeah.
When you're building AGI, there's depending on if you're optimistic or not, some chance of you building misaligned AGI that could kill most people on the surface of the Earth. And this is kind of a risk.
Right.
So I guess maybe governments just think this risk is quite small. So they're not thinking literally it will kill them. They think there's a small risk.
it seems like a common view among the sort of AI safety community would be that like there's a maybe more than 50% risk or something.
Is that the common view?
I guess that's a common view. I haven't checked carefully. Yeah.
I think for people who are building, huge language models and working in machine learning, I think they would put it at less than 50%. Maybe they would put it between 0.1% and 20%. That's what I get from them. I guess like people who are on the doomer side would put it like at higher than 50%, like even closer to like 90%.
That seems right.
Yeah. So I think there are like different, risk assessment. But yeah, I kind of agree with your view that it's like more risky than not risky.
In recent evenings have made a sort of elaborate spreadsheet model of arms races between people building different AIs, where the model is kind of like, well, if you can sort of put your effort into winning the race or into more safety. And I think this is kind of unlike the normal arms race situation in that, like, why do you want to win rather than the other side? It's partly because you think that you're more likely to have an aligned AI, right? And so if you're slowing things down and adding to alignment, it's sort of not obvious that the other side won't end up with a more aligned AI than you would have had. Like if you're racing and therefore not having much effort to put into safety, then that could end up being a worse AI than if you contribute to safety, which then helps the team that does get ahead to be safe, and also they're slower because you're not contributing to progress. So I think like depending on the details of the model, it can kind of go either way on whether, just unilaterally you should want to slow down, I think.
Yeah, so you wouldn't want to slow down everything and maximize safety, or at least like maximize safety overall. So maybe like if some company is building AGI first, you might want to join them and help them make it safe.
I'm imagining that you don't even necessarily have to join them. Like if you're doing safety research, if either you're doing safety research that is like generally helpful to other people who can read it, presumably you're not keeping your safety research secret, or just you're not contributing to progress. So progress is slower, and whatever safety research is happening, there's more time for it. It seems like either of those are helpful for whatever project gets, finally gets there being more safe.
That's assuming that the first company to build AGI will kind of read your paper and implement it. Like, so let's say if I'm writing a safety blog post on lesswrong.com, I'm kind of assuming that either like other papers will like read it and like it will be useful for other safety researchers, or that like someone at Baidu will like end up like reading the less wrong post and be like, oh yeah, I should probably write this down.
I agree that the safety research doesn't need to get to the people. Yeah, I guess in my model, I was assuming that maybe 50% of it gets to them or something like that, or there was a parameter you could vary. I think if it's down at like 10%, then like more often it becomes worth racing.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've played the game Intelligence Rising. It's like this role-play game by Chahar Avin at CSAR, where you're like kind of every actor is kind of a member of a company, or like represents a company, or
I've played some sort of role-playing game by Chahar. Yeah.
So I think it's probably this one.
Right.
So I think it's similar to the thing you were playing a few evenings ago, where you're like kind of, every turn you need to either build a new safety measure, like do like research and safety, or like research and capabilities, or you can like attack and like spy on other people.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully, my episode with Shahar will be up before this one, so it will make sense for people. So yeah, about like coordination. So I guess if I were to like role play someone disagreeing with you, I would say, what about China? Have China ever agreed on anything at all? Like, sorry, if we were trying to slow down AI progress, right?
Yeah.
For everyone at the same time, and China was not cooperating and just trying to speed run AGI, how would that play out in your scenario?
I think they have agreed to other things. I don't really know the details, but I think also often the things that people are wanting to agree to slow down on, it probably does net benefit the country who wants to go fast. For instance, like on climate change, my guess is that it's net good for China in particular to, release more carbon dioxide, because it's sort of a tragedy of the commons type situation where the harms go to everyone. But I think if the AI safety community is right, that AI is that bad, it's much less clear that it's worth it for China to do that. And so I think there's sort of also separately hope from them realizing that.
So we need to convince them that if they build it, it might explode in their hands.
Yeah. If that's true.
Well, seems plausible for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this podcast.
Oh, yeah. But it seems like if you really think you can't convince anyone in the world of a thing, you should probably wonder whether you're right about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, how did we end up convincing China to slow down carbon dioxide emissions? I think, if we want to replicate this, maybe it's worth thinking about how long did it take? Maybe it took 20 years to convince them. I'm not really sure on the history, but
I'm afraid I also don't know much about the history of such things.
So another argument that you mentioned in your draft is that maybe it's an argument from Scott, that we're friends with a bunch of people in the AI community, and we don't want to upset them. So if we were to slow down progress in AI in general, we might slow down progress at companies like DeepMind, OpenAI, Anthropic in the US or the UK, and this might annoy people who are working hard to make progress on safe AI at those companies. So what do you think about this argument from Scott? Do you think it's true? Do you think it's important to not annoy those people?
I disagree with the argument. I think there's some value to not annoying people. I guess I think it's probably wrong to think of it as kind of an alliance where if we were to pursue slowing down dangerous AI, that would be stabbing them in the back or something. I think for one thing,
how dare you?
A lot of people who work on AI capabilities, I think, do think there are serious concerns with safety. So I think it's sort of very unclear what different people want here, and probably there are a lot of different views. It seems like among people working on AI capabilities, I guess in this recent survey I worked on, a lot of them said they thought there was sort of more than 10% chance of an extremely bad outcome. So that's,
So more than half or something said there was
I think it was 48% said that it was at least 10% chance. And I guess we asked a few different questions about extinction because we're unsure whether this kind of ambiguous wording about badness rather than extinction really meant. I think we said e.g. a human extinction, but maybe they didn't mean human extinction. So we asked some more questions specifically about human extinction or permanently disempowering humans. And there the numbers were also 5 or 10% as the median.
And
chance.
The people you've interviewed were mostly doing research in deep learning, machine learning. So they were authors at NeurIPS, ICML, those kind of conferences, right?
They were all authors at NeurIPS or ICML. We just wrote to 50% of the authors at those conferences.
So they're kind of in the space of doing actual research. So they're researchers, and I guess one of the concerns about slowing progress is to kind of convince people to do this, right? So one thing is convincing researchers, and other thing is convincing regulators or government people. And I guess one argument could be how do you even convince those people to implement such drastic measures? In the sense that we haven't managed to convince a lot of people yet. They've tried to convince people that AI risk was important, technical AI element was important, and they have not succeeded after 15 years of effort. So I guess that's the main argument is like if they cannot be convinced of AI alignment, how do you convince them of like shutting down their company?
I guess in what sense has it been unsuccessful convincing people of this? Like it seems like among these AI researchers, like a lot of them think that these are important problems. And also like comparing the last survey to this survey, I think there was a big movement in the direction of thinking that something like the alignment problem is important and hard and that sort of thing.
We can like disagree on exactly where those guys need to be.
Yeah.
I think the first survey was in 2017, published 2017, maybe questions in 2016.
That's right.
And now we're in 2022. So depending on how long are your timelines, like I think we should have 50% of people thinking there's like a 50% chance that this is
Right.
bad. They're like a 10%. If they have like if there was like a 10% chance of something bad happening, I wouldn't be that worried about it.
Really? Wait,
Well,
I feel like 10% chance
like-
of the world being destroyed.
It's different. It's different from like a 50% chance, right? Or like a 90% chance.
It's different in some sense, but I think in the on the question of like should we be putting huge amounts of effort into this, I think most people would agree that I don't know if you thought there was a 10% chance that the illness you just got is going to cause you to die, most people would freak out, I would say.
But I don't think they're freaking out enough. Otherwise, they wouldn't be like publishing NeurIPS or ICML papers on AI capabilities.
That's probably right, but I feel like getting people to agree to a thing is a pretty good step toward getting them to like then take action on it. And I think maybe we haven't so much presented things for them to maybe do. So like maybe they're worried about it in some sense, and there's potential for something like that.
So in your ideal world, they would like sign something as like, oh, this is kind of an important problem. And then we get like those 500 researchers signing something and we just like go to the UN and say, hey, this is kind of important.
I don't have a good sense of whether that's the best kind of diplomatic solution. But in general, I would think like having a lot of the relevant scientists think that the technology they're working on is dangerous is like pretty helpful for regulating it in a useful way.
Yeah. Do you have like any other ideas for lobbying? I have the like idea of, Greta Thunberg like kind of did lobbying for climate change. It worked pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Some people on Twitter have been doing this for like stop building AGI. There's this guy called Carrie who keeps like tweeting something like stop building AGI on like every OpenAI thread. And he's getting some attention. Like everyone I meet know about this guy. I don't know if you've ever seen one of his tweets.
Is Carrie Vaughn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen a couple of them. They're maybe not the ones in that style.
Oh, okay. Yeah, do you think people should go more into that direction?
My tentative guess, if I had to not think any more about it and come up with a guess, is yes. But I think the thing that I'm more advocating for is like thinking more about this seriously. My sense is that people mostly dismiss anything under the heading of like slow down AI as soon as they can think of roughly one obstacle to it. And I mostly object to that and think that people should think more about it.
Yeah, so the default position of like, yeah, let's just like err on the side of caution and think more about it and have more time and consider things more carefully.
Something like that, yeah. And including like the default not being like, yeah, let's just like rush into a, suicide arms race with China or something. I feel like people sort of too readily are like, oh yeah, that's what we're doing. We'll probably die, but in the off chance that alignment isn't important, maybe we'll win instead of China, so that'll be good.
Yeah, I'm just going to present some of the other arguments I saw on your draft that were kind of interesting. Yeah. One is maybe people are thinking about this plenty, but just not under the potentially uncooperative seeming title, slowing down AI. So do you think there are like people who think about this but just don't talk about it in terms of slowing down?
It seems plausible. My guess is that that does not account for like, it's not that there's like enough thinking about it going on under that heading, and that this sort of explains the lack of talking about it. Just because I think over the years, there have been a lot of people sort of not thinking about it, as far as I can tell, who I think it would make sense for them to think about it. Just based on my own sort of talking to people and being around.
Your experience from actually communicating with people outside of your room.
Sometimes I used to.
So one other idea you've been hearing about is the faster AI capabilities work happens, the smoother AI progress will be. And this is kind of good.
I haven't thought through that a lot, but I think it does seem plausible to me that like the major disruptions to the world, or the major scenarios where someone sort of grabs a lot of power, are ones where like someone, like potentially an AI system, is a lot more capable than anyone else around. And so if progress happens very gradually, then maybe you manage to get to quite advanced AI without there having been a step at any point where anyone was vastly more powerful than those around them and could take control of things. That was all very abstract.
Yeah, it seems plausible. Another argument that people say a lot is that by working on AI, you're kind of making productive progress on alignment. And if you're not building AI at all, then you're not making progress in alignment. And so you're just like buying time, but at the end of the day, you're just dead.
I guess my impression is that you can work on alignment without forwarding AI progress very much, or at least that there's a lot of space for varying levels of forwarding AI progress, like with different, alignment plans. But I don't know the details of this very well.
Yeah, so some people think you need to make, so like you would make most of the progress about AI alignment in the like last few months before you build AGI. So I guess like if this is true, then you could try to make a lot of progress, but it won't be like the full progress you need. But I agree that in general, it would be better to have more time and not like accelerate things too much.
This thought that like most of the safety will happen in the last few months, I think comes from some sense that you can't really prepare for things ahead of time, or like make progress on any kind of like safety thing if you do it well in advance. I guess I just don't know how good the empirical evidence for that is. It seems to me like people very rarely try. As I less see people just definitely failing.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to plan for the next 10 years and making, concrete proposals for like how to slow things down and like what to present to the UN, it seems like a harder problem than just like writing some equations about AI alignment.
Yeah, as in like there are some kinds of preparation you can do that are like more helpful across a range of circumstances. So maybe they're like easier to do ahead of time, and other ones that are more dependent on circumstances, so it's harder.
I'm going to read a few of the stances you wrote about why people are silly to not want to slow down progress. Not silly, sorry. Like what?
Did I say that?
Sorry, you didn't say that. So, like a few reasons why people are not trying to slow down AI progress. So
Okay.
their motivations.
Yeah.
So one we have already talked about it is like most people are pro technology at heart.
Yeah.
Especially in Silicon Valley. Yeah. So another one is that when you talk about slowing down AGI, it makes people think about political moves like some kind of terrorism or other like non-cooperative conflicts.
Yeah. I think that's made vague sense.
Yeah. Do you think that's the main reason people avoid thinking about those things?
I think it might be a big reason. Whereas I think I think more generally, perhaps people are thinking of it as a relatively radical type move, slowing down AI. Whereas I think technology is slowed down very often, or like scientific progress is slowed down. Like, I don't know, all of medical research is substantially slowed down by efforts to make it safer.
Yeah, we've seen this with like how long it took to get some vaccines approved by FDA.
For instance, yeah.
So another point you make is that there like some external pressure in trying to build AI. So maybe economic pressure or political pressure, because it might be useful for countries in the future. And like it's not infinite, right? So those forces will not be infinite to the limit where we have like weapons or like other kind of regulation or things.
Yeah.
So do you think people are kind of wrong in thinking that, you know, economic pressure is impossible to avoid? Like we could have like other incentives that are stronger than economic incentives?
I think my sense is that people do treat such things as something like infinitely strong. Like that if there's a strong economic motive for something happening, that will be, you know, you can't fight with it. I think empirically, like with like medicine, I think is a good example where there's a huge amount of economic value we could have from like medical things happening faster. Like as I recently learned that like strep A kills like 500,000 people a year, and human trials on a vaccine for that I think were just banned for 30 years. You might think, wow, there's just like so much value on the table, surely that would happen. But no.
What's type A?
It's a kind of infection that I think it's actually a thing that can give you strep throat here, which isn't so bad, but a lot of people elsewhere in the world die from it.
Damn.
As a result of like other complications, like I think heart complications. But I looked into this very briefly, so I could be getting things wrong here.
Someone who has been very vocal about this is Sam Altman.
Yeah.
He's been kind of contrarian to the slowing down AI movement or just like long-termist movement. And he's been saying, either we figure out how to make AGI go well, or we wait for the asteroid to hit. And then he said, I'm optimistic we can do the former, and I do not believe we can colonize space without AGI. So do you think we should go for the stars and try to build AGI in our lifetimes or not?
I don't think that going for the stars requires building AGI in our lifetimes. It seems like the the deadline on colonizing the stars seems like it's not very pressing as far as I know. Yeah, I guess I also don't actually know the argument he has in mind for we need to have AGI to colonize the stars. It seems like hard to send humans out to the stars, so it seems like we need to have probably some sort of non-human version of something like ourselves. I guess something like, mind uploads seem like a sort of AGI that we might eventually get that is sort of more transportable.
So
speculatively.
So speculatively, you're more excited about mind upload.
Probably ultimately, I'm pretty excited about AGI, and I don't imagine that we would need to delay it for more than hundreds of years or something. So I think it's really not really relevant. And if it was important to get AGI to go to the stars, then I think we could do that probably. But if somehow that was impossible and we just couldn't ever build aligned AI or something, then I don't think that would stop us going to the stars. Or I guess I'm imagining that mind uploads would be aligned, as they would be, each one would be roughly like a human.
So you build a bunch of mind uploads and they're roughly aligned and you have many of them, and so you ask them to solve alignment, or you have much more power now.
I was imagining you just send them to space. But probably also they can do a lot of thinking, and I guess I was imagining a scenario where for some reason it's just impossible to ever solve alignment. But yeah, I think that doesn't seem likely to me.
So you just send Katja to space?
Perhaps, yeah.
And what happens?
I hope so.
What happens with those mind uploads? They just stay in the ship and then they go on some planet and try to get more energy and travel more. And
I imagine something like that. I haven't thought through it much, but I imagine something similar to whatever other space colonizing creatures would do. Which, I guess I hope involves some sort of happy lives as well as aggressive colonization and grabbing of resources for more colonization.
Is this where you see yourself in 100 years?
In space. I I guess I hope. um, I'm not sure.
One thing you ask, I think at the end of your draft, maybe it will be at the end of the post when it's published, is
Yeah.
to have people think about it for a week. So like people have a bunch of, justification in their head, some knee-jerk reaction to all of this, and they have arguments, but they haven't thought about it enough. So you kind of request them to think about it for a week. How do we have people to actually like think about this for any time?
Yeah, I don't know. That seems hard. I can't reliably sit down and think about something for me. But maybe sort of desist from having strong opinions until you've thought about it enough to be somewhat more confident about them, or
so ask people to be more reasonable.
That seems generally good. I'd be in favor of everyone being more reasonable about everything.
Is slowing down progress your main source of optimism?
No, I think my main source of optimism is probably just the AI safety community is mistaken about how bad this is. And, AGI is not going to destroy the world for sort of mundane reasons that other things don't destroy the world.
Wait, do you have more credence or optimism from people being wrong about?
Yeah.
So it means you're not optimistic at all.
Wait, no, I'm pretty optimistic about people being wrong. People are wrong all the time.
Yeah, what would you say is from the two people being wrong? Yeah, I don't think you want to say that in a public podcast, but like very likely, somehow likely.
Likelihood that everyone's wrong. Well, I mean, people have different views about how likely doom is. I think my probability on AI destroys the world is probably something like 7%. So that's like a relatively high probability on some other people around being fairly wrong.
So your PDUM is 7%. This is like surprisingly precise. How do you come up with a number?
I wrote down a lot of arguments and put probabilities on them and then combined them. But also for fun, I often make predictions about things and put them in a spreadsheet. I recently got to 1,000. And I make very precise, I put precise probabilities on things. Yeah, it's better.
I think it's difficult to make predictions for like less than 1% or like more than 99%. It's good to be like in the 1% precision.
As in, you think it shouldn't be more precise than 1%?
Yeah, I think when you're trying to like guess stuff on Metaculus, which is a website where you can make predictions, you cannot go less than 1% or like more than this precision because like human brain cannot possibly like be more than like 99% confident on things.
Whoa.
On like
I'm more than 99% confident about all kinds of things. For instance, when I eat a sandwich, I'm more than 99% confident that it won't kill me. Otherwise, I wouldn't eat sandwiches.
Right. I guess like most stuff on Metaculus are kind of speculative, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
They're pretty hard to predict. So you predict mostly stuff like eating sandwich and like we like eat a sandwich and it will just kill me.
I don't have that one in my spreadsheet, but it's a lot of mundane things. Most of them are not really in the less than 1% or more than 99% range, though sometimes they are.
Yeah, I've tried doing those predictions as well. I have like a short program on my computer where you can just like type a letter and then like write a prediction.
Oh, nice.
But the question is, when do you actually like review them? Like, do you do this like on a daily basis in the morning?
I don't have a particular habit. I sometimes get into it more or less. I've been doing it on and off since 2018, and I guess there are probably big gaps where I didn't do it at all. And then
do you actually like recalibrate yourself? Like, think like, oh, every time I say 60%, it means like 70%. So you try to like go in the other direction.
I try to. For things that aren't my own behavior, I'm just surprisingly well calibrated for the most part, though.
For things that are not your behavior?
Yeah, for things that are my own behavior, I'm not very well calibrated at all. But for things that are my own behavior, I'm not very good on 80%. But the other ones, I'm like, I think my average distance is like about 3% off the actual thing.
This is your Briar score or something?
No, Briar score takes into account whether you're actually right or not. Whereas, for instance, you can be well calibrated by, thinking things are 60% and then they actually happen 60% of the time.
Oh, okay.
Whereas you would have a better Briar score if you actually thought things were 99% when they were true, for instance.
Right. So you're just like well calibrated on how likely stuff is going to happen or not.
Yeah.
This is pretty good. I think most people are not that well calibrated. So the 3% is like the maybe the average distance to the or maybe the kind of distance between the average distance for like every percentile or something.
Maybe dividing it into like 11 buckets, like things that are around 70%, say. Like if the average probability for things around 70% was in fact 70%, or like if the thing that I said for them was 70%, then like the real frequency of them happening is like less than 73%, say.
This is pretty crazy. But I guess there's a bias of like those are things that are resolving in your lifetime, or at least like since you've made this, right? So we have no guarantee that
that you should listen to my 7%
of Kidum being like 7% plus minus 3.
Yeah, it's true. I've had no opportunity to test it on things that happen outside of my lifetime.
Alas. But it's kind of interesting that you're have a process model. Do you remember the like kind of things that explain this number? Is it like what are the conditional probabilities? Do you kind of remember from the top of your head?
That went into the sort of 7%. I think I don't remember what the numbers were. I remember somewhat what the
questions
were. Yeah, I think I sort of I think of it was sort of the basic argument for AI risk to my mind, and then I sort of was putting probabilities on the different parts of it. Where I take the basic argument to be something like it's very likely to be powerful AI sometime soon. It's very likely to be agentic, as in there will be instances of it that have goals and pursue them. If they're agentic, powerful AIs, their goals are likely to be bad. And then if all of that happens, they're likely to carry out their bad goals and destroy the world.
I don't even know how to start on deciding whether an AI will be agentic or not.
I guess for these different parts, I broke it down into more things. So it's sort of like, well, are there reasons to think it will be agentic? I think one reason is that agentic things seem pretty useful. So for instance, if you could have like a tool that, like, I don't know, suppose you want to like make some kind of, marketing material or something. If you have a tool that you can use to make the marketing material, that's kind of good. But if you can have a thing where you just sort of set it free and it goes and knows what needs doing and does it, that's like more helpful.
So it's generally more useful to have general AI that does things for you instead of just doing like one particular thing.
Seems like the task of knowing what the goal is and then figuring out which things should be done for that goal is just a task. And if you don't have to do that task, that's better. So the sort of economic reason for people to make things that are goal-directed-ish. I think there are also some other reasons around for expecting things to be goal-directed, which are like, there are these coherence arguments that say like if you're not very goal-directed, then from the perspective of if you were goal-directed, it would be good to be more goal-directed.
Why?
maybe that's an uncharitable description. But like an example of this that's simple is kind of like, imagine you have sort of circular preferences. For instance, you like apples more than pears, and pears more than bananas, and bananas more than apples. And for any of these trades, you're willing to like pay $1 for the one that you like more. Then I can take your money by continually trading these things with you, and maybe you end up with an apple, and I got $3 pushing you around the circle.
Can I have your banana? I have an apple.
Yeah. And so from the perspective, so you might say, well, if you realize that you are a creature like this who is going to go around in this circle, then you should prefer to change yourself into one who is not like that, so that you don't keep losing these dollars, because the dollars are maybe helpful for you getting any of these fruit that you like.
So if I'm not a Jainty, I should self-modify and become an agent, or at least like some agent with like a normal utility function that doesn't suffer from like those kind of trades that extract money from me.
That's the thought, yeah. I guess I don't quite follow how this works for things that are not really agents. For instance, if I'm a creature who wants to go around in this circle and lose money, you could say that I would prefer to not lose the money. You could also say that I like losing the money, and I would prefer to be changed in some other way where I lose more money, because losing money is equivalent to going around this circle, which I like. Like sort of once you're incoherent, in some sense, everything is equally good. And so I think you need, as far as I can tell, it seems like you need a somewhat different argument to say that in practice a creature should change into a particular different creature.
Yeah, I feel like this creature would just like prefers banana to apple and apple to pear. Would just like be like so happy to just like do trades all the time.
Yeah.
Doesn't really have a concept of like having more money is good.
Right.
Yeah, okay. In my mind, if we build machines with deep learning, we will have machines that are normal EGT functions and not like weird creatures invited on lesswrong.com. But I guess I might be wrong about all of this.
I think that's another class of reasons to expect that things will be agentic, is just that maybe if you make things using like the current techniques, maybe they're likely to become agents. It seems like there are some arguments along those lines.
Yeah, I guess my guess would be that we might want them to, have plans or use reinforcement learning or those kind of things that
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true.
end up building agents. So yeah, I'll be super down to have all your numbers and like know your actual probability, but I don't think you brought this, and this is like maybe not the plan for now.
Yeah.
The important part is, except from slowing down AI progress in general, is that you wrote this very cool survey and is now not really published. It's like on the AI impacts website, but maybe soon there will be a paper.
At least the paper on the archive. I guess we might try and actually get it published somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe a few words on AI impact, because this is what you do, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so I've listened to other podcasts you've done. So one with 80,000 Hours and one with Daniel Phelan, where you explain like a bit of the philosophy of AI impact. So we might not go about it for a while, but just like, yeah, in short, what is AI impacts about, and what do you think about when you work for your company?
The basic goal is to try and answer these questions about the future of AI that are important. Like, does AI pose an existential risk to humanity?
Yes or no?
Yes or no? How likely? What does it look like? Like, how is there going to be like a very fast intelligence explosion such that suddenly out of the blue, a single agentic AI is taking over the world, or is the risk more like a giant economy sort of slowly going off the rails and no longer being under human control in any way? Is it something else? Is it kind of like misuse, accidents, that sort of thing? And I guess the hope in general is to answer these questions via sort of answering easier questions that bear on those things. And I guess empirically, we're pretty interested in empirical things and often try and find things where there's sort of evidence from like AI that's happened already or past technologies, that sort of thing. So in practice, the research we end up doing is often about things other than AI.
Yeah, I remember there was something about cotton.
Yeah, it's true. Where we put too much effort into learning about cotton gins in the 1700s at one point.
Yeah. So I guess more generally, when we're trying to think about whether we will have slow or fast takeoff scenarios, you might want to look at trajectories of other technologies in the past and see how did this happen.
Less because you expect the trajectory to just like look like the other trajectories in the past necessarily, because like maybe there are reasons to expect this to be different somehow, but also to like check those reasons for why you might expect it to be different. Like if people say like this is much more likely to have giant discontinuous jumps in it because it's a kind of software thing and software can just suddenly get much better, well then you can look at past software things and see like did they get discontinuously better, that sort of thing. So it's often kind of more complicated than.
So one thing I disagree with Gwern, and I want to get this out in the podcast, is that I think it's likely that we're going to get some Manhattan Project investments on AGI, like some government spending like marginal fraction of their GDP on building AGI, and he thinks that Manhattan Project was something very special, like the US thought the German already had it or something. So do you think we can like look at past examples from, nuclear war or like Cold War or something to see like what would like an arms race look like, or like budgets from governments?
Definitely think looking at things that happened in the past is a great start for guessing what will happen. I think in general, looking at nuclear weapons as an example is a thing you want to do knowingly and thoughtfully, because it seems like nuclear weapons is sort of one of the more surprising technological things that has happened, or something. It was like a huge discontinuity. It was sort of like we discovered a new form of energy. Like that doesn't happen that often. And so I think there's a risk of like just always looking at nuclear weapons as like your one example of what technology looks like, and then being wrong because it's unusual in many ways.
But maybe that's the right reference class for AGI, right? There's something unusual, like a new form of energy.
Maybe, but I guess it seems good to actually check that that's true. I feel like there's maybe a kind of circular discussion that happens where people are like, AI, it's going to be totally different from anything. You're like, why do you think that? You're like, well, look at nuclear weapons. You're like, wait, why are we looking at nuclear weapons? Like, well, because it was crazy and different from everything, like AI will be. And I guess it seems good to more object level check that's the best analogy.
Yeah, look at, cotton. Was it cotton?
Cotton gin.
Cotton gin, yeah. Yeah, and I think those are kind of at least like very useful estimates to have, right? If you're trying to like estimate future AI hardware spending, it's like worth thinking about like how much spending did we have in the past, or if you want to like extrapolate some trends in GPU price or other thing. And if you have one of those questions, in general, AI impacts is the right place to start.
Maybe. I mean, there are a lot of those questions to have, and we've only covered a very tiny corner, but you might check AMX.
But yeah, I think the thing I'm mostly excited about right now is that you have this new survey from 2022 on the website, and you have this like summary of results. So maybe just like start with some context from these questions. Like, what were the questions you asked in 2016, and are they the same questions you asked like this year?
The questions are very nearly the same. They were all the same, except I changed a couple of questions slightly because they were actively misleading now, as in they sort of implied that things were maybe impossible, that were no longer impossible or something. So I wanted to stop them implying that. And I also added 2 questions about human extinction explicitly, because previously we had this question, there was sort of like divide the probability between sort of very good, mediocre, bad, very bad outcomes. And in retrospect, it was sort of somewhat too ambiguous what people actually meant by that. So I wanted to check. But yeah, so part of my goal with doing the survey was to make it extremely similar to the 2016 one. So both of them had really a lot of questions. Each person got a randomized subset of a very large number of questions. So the sort of headline questions were about like when there'll be something like AI that can do everything that humans do, and how good or bad that might be. And there are also questions about intelligence explosions, whether things will go very fast after human level AI. Some about what inputs matter for AI progress, like to what extent it's mostly hardware that has helped versus other things. Various questions about safety and like whether people like safety or want more safety.
Do you like safe AI?
Yeah, like that.
If you could have like safe AGI or like unsafe AGI.
Yeah, it's important to ask questions so you really find out what people think. And then I guess there are 32 narrow capabilities that people are asked about. So like, when will AI be able to write a song that's as good as a Taylor Swift song or something like that? Yeah, and then there's some more as well that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, so about this like high-level machine intelligence, what kind of predictions did you ask? Was it like, when will we get high-level machine intelligence?
We asked some people, we gave them 3 different probabilities, 10%, 50%, and 90%, and we asked them in what years that amount of probability would have been reached, basically. And then a different set of people, we gave them years, and we asked them what the probability was that we would have high-level machine intelligence by those years. And then a different set of people again, we asked about not high-level machine intelligence, but full automation of labor, which is like when AI can do all of the occupations, which to my mind is quite similar to when will AI be able to do all of the tasks, but it turned out to be much later.
When you say all of the tasks, do you mean like economically viable tasks, like in people's definitions of AGI sometimes?
I think I just meant all of the tasks.
All of the tasks. Yeah, maybe you just like disregard things that would require like high level of dexterity from robots, like I don't know, walking like a human. Those kind of things are kind of useless.
Maybe they're kind of useless, but I think still the definition we're talking about is just like it's feasible to do them if you wanted to. But note that it's not like there's one particular system that can do all of them. It's more like there's some system that can do any task that a human can do.
Right. Okay. So that's one thing I was not understanding correctly. So it's not like one general thing. It's as a whole, the entirety of things we can do with AI is more than what humans can do.
Right.
And cheaper for all of them.
Yep.
Do you think there are things that will never be cheaper? Like, okay, I imagine a world where we have those like massive neural networks, and maybe they can do like whatever humans can do possibly, but having like robots that walk like humans cost like, I don't know, 100K, whereas like for a human it costs nothing, to like just walk.
It costs nothing. It costs something to create a human, and
it costs something to create
feed
a
them
human.
and stuff. Look after them.
Yeah, you just like pay someone to walk for you. It's like just like it's very cheap, right? And I imagine a world where writing code is increasingly cheap, or doing like all like white collar job is extremely cheap, but like having actual like robots carrying out things for us and being like very flexible is kind of expensive. So yeah, I just think we're going to reach like something like recursively self-improving AI sooner than HLMI.
Right, because you think things like robotics might be substantially later.
Yeah, and just like every task seems like
Like a lot.
a high demand. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that seems pretty plausible that, recursively self-improving AI, or I mean, I don't know. It seems like technology in general is sort of recursively self-improving. So, I imagine that AI is already recursively self-improving. Like, surely there's AI that is helpful for other AI. But like a much tighter feedback loop of that seems quite likely to happen before AI can do all human tasks. I agree. Yeah, this is not necessarily like the first time that AI is important or something. It's just like a somewhat definable line.
Yeah, and that's like something people can understand without like reading a few paragraphs about like what is transformative AI, or like some word that people have like high knee-jerk reaction about, like AGI. So if you ask them about like high-level machine intelligence, you don't use the word human or general, and maybe people have better reactions.
I think it's fairly hard to define any of these things in a really good and clear way that might point at the thing you want.
That's true. I feel like AGI people say kind of the similar thing you said, but without the cheaper part, and they say when AI could do all economically viable tasks. I think that's fairly like useful definition, and also like easy to define.
I feel like it has a very similar problem that the important thing might happen well before that. I think all economically useful tasks is going to be fairly similar to all tasks.
That's right. We can get the recursively self-improving part way before. But I think in general, it's a good thing to write precise questions and ask people about it. So yeah, I think that's like a huge effort into, asking hundreds or thousands of researchers about it. How do you go about like running a survey like this? Like, do you just like write a script that like grabs all those emails and just like massively email those people?
Actually, asked my friend Ben Weinstein-Ron to do that, and he did. So that was great. or to collect all the emails, which I think I don't want to say like just write a script. I think it ended up being like somewhat tricky, but was a kind of write a script based strategy, not like a manually grab them strategy. Yeah, and then write emails to them. I wrote them emails in a number of different bouts where I experimented with saying different things in the invitation and that sort of thing in the hope of getting a higher response rate, because it was pretty low to begin with.
How low?
I think initially it looked like it was going to be like 2 or 3%, whereas in the 2016 survey it was like, I think between like 20 and 25% or something. So
That's huge.
yeah, but like sending out some reminders and waiting and stuff got it up to, in the 10% vicinity. But still, I was kind of hopeful for getting it higher. I think in the end it was like maybe like roughly 15% or something like that. So not too bad.
Yeah, I think 15% of cold emailing AI researchers is pretty good.
I also offered them money often.
Money?
Yeah.
How much?
It varied.
If the paper is very good, offer 1,000.
It was more like I wasn't sure what was appealing to them, and tried different. Like I guess I initially tried offering what we did last time, which was like a 10% chance of like hundreds of dollars, and then I thought maybe that wasn't actually working very well, so I tried just like a definite chance of a smaller amount of money, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't think people enjoy losing 90% of the time. But maybe like people you select with like 10% chance of winning some money will be kind of biased with the like 10% chance of building HLMI. If they're like very confident in one way.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking about anything like that. I think part of the reason for doing this kind of thing is there's just some sort of logistical hassle, like sending someone, $25 or something. And you, if you only have to do that logistical hassle for one person out of 10, for still the same expected number of dollars, like that's nice. But yeah, ended up doing it non-probabilistically for most people. So now we have a lot of logistical hassle sending money out to people.
One question I've been seeing a lot on Twitter recently is, would you rather have something like 100K for the rest of your life?
Right.
Or like 50% chance of like 3 million right now?
Yeah.
And I guess it depends on like what people are, what incomes people have right now, right?
Yeah.
But I guess as a human being, you don't really want to like have a half percent chance, a 50% chance of like losing everything, right? And having zero.
Right. Yeah. That does seem like what humans are often like.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of understand why people like were not like keen on taking the survey initially, but after you did like a lot of work and they kind of answered, and there's like now a lot of answers. Do you know like about like how many people kind of answered? Is it like more in the hundreds or in the thousands?
If I recall, I think it was like roughly 700-ish.
Roughly 700-ish?
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people. It's like, do you think it's a good sample size to like do useful statistics on this?
I would guess so, but I'm not sure. I haven't actually done the statistics. So yeah.
Oh, okay. But you've done the statistics 5 years ago or 6 years ago.
I didn't do it on that occasion. On neither occasion have I had much to do with the statistics.
If you have the number on the top of your head or written down, do you know what were the like average or aggregate forecast for high-level machine intelligence? For a 50% chance of high-level machine intelligence. So what do people say as an aggregate for having a 50% chance of HLMI?
I think it was like 37 years.
37. 2059. This is like a long time. Like this isn't a long time, but also I feel like you're like asking for something very hard. So one interesting thing is you can compare this survey with the survey you ran before, right?
Yeah.
And you can know whether people have shortened their timelines or not. And they did, right?
Yeah, I think it was previously 2061 and now it's down to 2059.
Mm.
So very slightly shorter.
So slightly shorter. The time has passed as well, right?
Right.
So
So-
6 years after or 5 years after is like 8 years less, and so it's like just like a
Yeah.
2 years difference.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's still like some difference. And Gwern commented on Less Wrong on the result, and I think this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek remark, saying, "This is striking because if you buy the supposed Myers-Garrow law that AGI is always predicted to happen a safe distance in time after one's retirement, then the estimate should have moved from 2061 to 2067. So in terms of net change, they didn't move merely the naive change of 2 years, but a full 8 years. I wonder if it was a one-time shock due to past few years of scaling." Do you have any thoughts on the Myers-Garrow law that people should only predict things when they're retired?
I do have some thoughts. I guess I don't buy it. Partly because I guess in 2014 or 15 or something, probably 2015, I looked into this. We had a big data set of predictions people had made about AI over the years, and I checked whether the Myers-Garrow law appeared to have any support. It didn't really seem like it in this data set. I think maybe the correlation was like very slightly in that direction, but it was extremely slight.
Yeah, and I think there's like another correlation people have made on Less Wrong by looking at the data you released, saying that the more years people have been in the field, so like the more experience you have in AI, the longer your timelines were.
Oh, huh.
Like very slight correlation.
Yeah, right.
So I guess it's kind of the boomer correlation of like the older you are, the longer your timelines are.
I wonder if that's because like things have been faster recently. So if you've been around for longer, like if you just kind of average the rate over, your time being around, the older people have kind of seen slow times and recent fast time, and they sort of imagine they expect more slow times again or something.
Yeah, your grandfather has seen slower progress in technology in general, so he just like, he just like updates more slowly because he's seen like more like slow stuff in general. So you have also asked like, what's the probability that the long run effect of advanced AI will be extremely bad, meaning like human extinction? And I think the result was something like 5%, as you said. So people are kind of pessimistic about all of this.
Yeah.
Do you think? And I think this is kind of surprising, is that the level of doomerism or like pessimism was constant throughout the years, right?
It had the same median between 2016 and now. As there was this other survey in between done by folk at GovAI, where they got an answer of 2%, I think. It seems like their question was slightly different, so I don't know whether that affected it. But yeah, overall it seems like it's sort of constant.
Yeah, and I think we should like point out that for some of those questions, there's like some kind of conditional probability going on. So when we're asking about high-level machine intelligence, is it high-level machine intelligence, like HLMI?
Yeah.
You kind of ask them to predict this conditional on like something else being true, which is human scientific activity continuing without any measure disruption. So you're like kind of assuming that, business goes as usual.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think would be like the difference if you like just ask them like HLMI go?
I guess there's not very much difference. And I think in retrospect, we probably shouldn't have included that caveat. And I don't actually remember now what we were thinking in 2016 when we wrote that. I could speculate, but
yeah. I think some people put some probability of slowing down AI progress, or like some totalitarian regime happening where like we stop building AI in general.
Or my guess is that why we put it is partly because we expected people to have, like, for some portion of people to have views along the lines of like some random other bad thing will happen, like climate change will destroy everything or something.
Or nuclear war.
And I guess there's some sort of general principle in asking people questions that you should try and ask them things that they know about. So we wanted to not be asking them about their views on other world events. and to try and keep it to like, how's the AI going?
Yeah. So you try to ask like nuclear experts about nuclear war and
Right.
experts about AI.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable. So I guess I have a more devil's advocate question,
Yeah.
which is if the number of like 5% median is still the same, have we failed as a community to like communicate to those researchers that the AI alignment problem is kind of hard?
I mean, it seems like if the AI alignment problem is kind of hard, a 5%, like, I think a 5% chance of doom could be what it looks like if the alignment problem is kind of hard.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
like,
you're at 7%.
Yeah.
You think that the 5% is pretty good.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I guess I also think it's not clear that the community knows how hard the alignment problem is, and it seems like there are a variety of views on it. I also don't know that the community has been trying that much to communicate how hard the alignment problem is.
So I guess if the 5% or like 7% number are closer to the truth, right?
Yeah.
If you wanted to have people like learn more about something, you should have their probability distribution converge or like be like more narrow towards the number. Is there like basically the same like standard deviation? I know you don't have the results on the top of your head, but I guess like yeah, I would be like more optimistic if like the results were like only to 5%.
It does seem like a good thing to check. But I did actually look at I guess we have these other questions about like we sort of describe something like the alignment problem and ask, do you think this is an important problem? Is it a hard problem? I think is it like a valuable problem to work on at the moment? And I think all of those answers, like the distribution shifted toward it being important and valuable and hard.
I think the question is, should society prioritize AI safety research more than it is currently prioritized? And I guess like people can like choose between like more or like much more. And if you take the number of people saying more or like much more, I think it's like a 49% increase from 2016. I do have the number.
Yeah. Yeah, so that seems like something. There are actually two different sets of safety questions, though. That is one of them, which seems pretty promising for, have opinions moved on these kinds of things. But then separately, there were these other questions that were in, about a more specific description of what the problem is. For each one, I think people could put probability on different they could answer like they had like 5 options for how important it is, say. So for importance, like the top evaluation of importance went from 5% to 20% of people who thought it was like most important. For the value of working on it today, the top category went from 8% to 27%. And for how hard it is, like much harder than other things, went from 9% to 26%.
That's pretty convincing. You have good data to support your claims. Yeah, I feel like people started caring more. Do you think it's because of like more AI progress and people are taking like short timelines or medium timelines more seriously? Or do you think that they've read like book from Taboo?
It seems like their timelines did not actually change very much. So I don't think it's that one. But I don't know what has changed opinion there.
Maybe they've started watching Robert Miles. Another good question is takeoff speeds. You've talked a lot about takeoff speeds on the Daniel Flynn podcast. And you've tried to ask people what they thought would happen in 30 years about HLMI. So either things would go very fast or like less fast. And I think the median respondents say there's like a 60% chance that the system will be vastly better than humans at all professions. And 80% chance that it will increase capabilities dramatically. So they're kind of thinking that slow takeoff, like 30 years takeoff, is kind of likely.
I mean, those numbers were saying that takeoff before that time is likely, right? So like that would also include like fast takeoff.
So at least slow takeoff is likely.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I would give it like 95% or like 99%.
That like with that by 30 years after HLMI, things are way better.
Yeah, so if
Yeah.
it seems like HLMI is pretty impressive, right? It can do like anything that humans can do and cheaper. So
Yeah.
I just like don't know what happens for 30 years. Like I
Yeah.
don't know why people said something like 60%, like 80%. Like what are the other people thinking?
They could be imagining that like progress in everything kind of proceeds at familiar rates. Like I guess if we look at like progress in chess AI, say it seems like it took like many decades to go from novice level to grandmaster level. And so if things are going at that rate, maybe like, well, once you're past novice level, merely 30 years later, you're nowhere near grandmaster level. So like maybe you're not vastly better than novice level yet. And so it seems like you might imagine that progress would go much faster than, how fast it did in the 20th century for chess AI.
Yeah.
But maybe there's room for disagreement.
I guess the results from like AlphaGo playing with itself and like going in 3 days from like not knowing about the rules to like much better than any humans without like any cap because it can play with himself, right? There's like if the thing we build is close to self-play agents, then we don't have like any cap on like humans, right? If the thing we build requires like some human data and we're like actually bottlenecked by compute or like human data, then maybe we like might stagnate or.
I mean, I don't know if the argument would involve there being any particular importance to human level. It's just that you might imagine progress overall doesn't just go arbitrarily fast. And so, like, if we're measuring from like when it passes human level, it's sort of not obvious that, like, for any arbitrary amount better that will happen in some short period.
Yeah, I guess the basic argument is just that if it can run on some hardware faster than humans, then if you like double the compute or some hardware that is able to like do stuff twice as fast, then you can have double human intelligence. So I guess like the argument would be like for 30 years, people have not thought of like, oh, maybe you should like add another GPU. And
if you would count having enough hardware that you're running like twice humanity's worth of thinking as like vastly better than human level, then it's like, well, that's pretty easy. We just get a bunch more GPUs and surely we can do that easily.
Yeah, or just that computers are not bottlenecked by working memory or speed or being in some kind of meat bag. And so I guess if they can do like any task that human can do, they would, without like any of the requirements we have, then I don't really see like any reasons why we should like wait 30 years. But I guess those people were just like people like giving like their rough guess at something in 5 minutes.
They answer these questions very fast.
And then there was like a question about fast takeoff. So 2 years after HLMI. And the actual answer was 20% chance. I feel like maybe this is like the median guy would say 20% chance. Yeah. So do you think those people are really like small credence in like fast takeoff, or just like they were like answering fast and like seems likely, seems less likely?
I think I don't have any reason to particularly doubt their answer there in either direction. I think my prior guess would have been that they don't have that high a chance on very fast takeoff.
We previously talked about aggregate, forecasts, right? So I guess the question is like, how do you aggregate the things? And you explained that you do something weird with like some gamma distribution. We try to like fit people distributions with like a gamma function. So why do you do that? What's a gamma function?
I think the important things about a gamma distribution here are like that it doesn't put any weight on numbers below 0. And so I think it's often used for modeling how long until a thing happens, because the thing probably didn't happen in the past. It's broadly a thing that kind of looks like, or, there's like, more probability of a thing happening in some period, and then it tapers off, which is perhaps intuitively fitting the kind of distribution we're looking for here.
What's special about this kind of gamma thing
compared to
just like a normal probability distribution that has zero chance happening now and like 100% in like 500 years?
I guess I'm not sure what the normal one would be. Like there are literally a normal distribution. A problem with that is that it would have some probability in the past,
right?
And so you don't want that. But my own reasons for using it in the 2022 one are actually to just do things exactly the same as in the 2016 one, so that everything is very comparable.
So basically, you just like want a distribution that doesn't give us stuff in the past and as something like 0 as the first like time step, and then as the probability of 1 at the end, right? So like the cumulative distribution is like 1. As you mentioned, you were not like responsible for everything in the survey, and the survey is a small part of your work. You run AI impacts, but you're also trying to conceptualize AI risk more and how it will evolve as a technology. So I think this is like something you have some thoughts about, and maybe you might write a blog post about it. You want to go on this? Like, how do you conceptualize AI risk right now?
Yeah, I guess lately I've been kind of thinking about it in a different way to previously. Lately I've been thinking about it as kind of like there are two important things happening with sort of human level-ish AI. Well, one of them is that there's this giant new pile of intellectual labor happening in the world, or like cognitive labor. So previously throughout history, there's been like a sort of allotment of cognitive labor per person. It's sort of like each person has a brain that they can do a certain amount of thinking with. And that both sort of means the amount of cognitive labor per person has been pretty similar, and also means that it's like distributed fairly equally. Like you can pay other people to do work, and thereby some people end up being able to control more cognitive labor than others. But it's hard for someone to just like sell all of their thinking time. So usually everyone ends up with like some decent fraction of what they started out with, and things aren't sort of as wildly unequal as they can be for other things. But with AI, there's going to be just like a fire hose of new cognitive labor, and it's sort of unclear where it will go. And it probably won't be distributed equally among people. So there could be like much more inequality of like using this cognitive labor. And cognitive labor is useful for all kinds of things, like strategizing, like somewhat in contest between different people. Like, for instance, in politics, it seems like if you have a lot more thinking effort to put into things, you can do better, as well as things that are less competitive. But it could be sort of very disruptive for like large fractions of it to be going to like some particular narrow sets of goals, or like either one person or like a company, or something like that. I think the other thing that is sort of happening at the same time is that there are like new agents in the world. So like so far there have like most of the creatures around with goals doing things much are humans. They're also animals, but they like don't have that much power in the world. But with advanced AI, it seems like we'll basically make something sort of like new alien minds that will be not very human-like, and be able to sort of have goals and do things in the world. And it seems like these two different things will happen at the same time, which means that they'll kind of be combined, so that it could be that huge piles of cognitive labor go to these new minds. And I think that's where the giant risk is, that the AI safety people are most worried about, that it's not even sort of human inequality, it's just like all the power goes to these new creatures. But either of the things on their own, I think, would already be large problems, and are maybe somewhat problems that other people might be worrying about. Like I think if you just had the huge amount of inequality among humans and existing organizations, that would be potentially pretty bad. Or if you just have like a huge influx of new kind of potentially psychopathic aliens or something, I guess if they don't have any power, maybe that's fine. But it's already a kind of alarming and new thing in the world. Like both of these are relatively new things.
So it's a basic idea that we'll like have a new species or like new digital minds coming that might have like a lot of cognitive power and also like have goals. And we need to like, either like live with them or all the power will go to them, or one agent might have like all the power. I think they're like a bunch of different problems. What is the one you're like mostly interested in?
I think probably the most interesting one is like the problem that maybe some of them get a lot of the power. I think if instead some humans got a lot of the power, for instance, like if a lot of the AI ends up being not in the form of sort of agentic systems, if they're more kind of tool AI, it could be that just some people get a lot of that, and that, I don't know, that could still be potentially bad depending on what those people are trying to do, or at least be a situation where a lot of people are overpowered in some way and it's not very fair or good for people.
So how is that different from the basic argument of super intelligence? Like we might have systems that are like much more than us and that therefore have much power than us. How is that different from just like thinking about systems that might be more powerful than us in general?
I think it's helpful to me to sort of break it up into the two different things going on, which I think are like separately novel, being like cognitive labor and sort of new entities.
So new entities being like not humans, and
Right.
cognitive labor that companies could use to produce like more outputs.
I mean, I guess cognitive labor is sort of used for all sorts of goals all the time. like people use cognitive labor for figuring out what to do in their lives or making any kind of choice. Or
Yeah, I guess the main difference is that you need like bag of meats. You need like humans to do it, right? So you need to like ask humans to do it, and they like go to sleep, and you need to wait. But if you can just like invest all your money in like cognitive labor on capital,
yes,
then you don't like have like dependencies on like humans.
yeah, that seems right. And that seems like a big deal. Yeah.
So is that basically why you think like AI is kind of a different technology, that there's like this whole part of like cognitive labor that like other tech before didn't have, like, I don't know, steam engine or something like this, like didn't automate like any cognitive labor, and now with AI we can automate all of this?
I think that is kind of novel, though it seems like the steam engine did sort of automate different stuff that humans did in other ways before. And so there have been kind of analogous, exciting new things. Like, I guess a long time ago, maybe most physical labor was done by humans. And at some point, we sort of disconnected that from humans. And now you can have huge amounts of strength, physical strength, without having to get any humans to go along with you. And that was important, maybe to a similar extent. I don't know.
When do you think your job will be automated by AI?
25 years?
2047. It seems coherent with Kurzweil's prediction of a singularity. Yeah. And do you think you're going to still be alive?
Yes.
With a 93% chance. If people are interested in why AI is important as a new form of labor, and like the different like singularities different shapes of trajectory, singularity of type 1, singularity of type 2, and like the different like interaction between human labor and like AI labor, and watch my video with Philip Trammell on the economics of transformative AI. This is great. But as of right now, I do have questions I need to ask you, because I posted stuff on Twitter being like, oh, I'm interviewing Katja Grace about AI forecasting, and I got like a few questions that I find interesting and fun. So one, you need to imagine like people posting stuff on Twitter. So one is just like a meme of like a picture of monkeys discussing it up in a TV panel. and the text says when AGI. So basically, monkeys discussing when AGI will happen. So yeah, when AGI.
Okay, so to be clear, this is not like the result of careful research on my part or something. This is my made up number at this moment. 35 years.
Just like add 10 more years after Katja grade has been estimated.
My job doesn't seem that hard.
Going on podcast and emailing people. Do you? Sorry, if you've seen recent Yudkowsky's tweets, you might have stumbled upon one of his question. What is the least impressive fit that you would bet big money at 9-1 odds cannot possibly be done in 2 years? So basically, you get the favorable odds if the thing doesn't happen in 2 years. Like in quotes, because of AI, right? Not like something else.
What is the least impressive thing that I think there's a 90% chance will not happen within 90% chance that it's like impossible regardless of like how hard I try or something. I guess I was a bit confused about the combination of cannot happen and 90%.
Yeah, so 90% chance it cannot happen.
Okay, yeah.
So like I guess he tries to like make it in form of odds because you would like take the bet or something.
Right. I think it's pretty hard to answer questions of the form, what is the least
impressive,
X? Because then I have to think through every possible one potentially. But
maybe goes just like for one.
Yeah. A relatively unimpressive thing that I think won't happen in 2 years, at least 90%, is like writing assistant software that makes blogging better, such that either my blog is like notably better written by someone reading it. So if they look at like 2022 and 2024 blog, they're like, wow, 2024 blog is substantially better written, and that's due to the writing tools. Or it's like 20% faster for me to write. So.
Okay, I would take the bet for the 20% faster. I think we have like tools that could like help you write 20% faster.
What are they?
I don't know. They're being developed by, companies doing, natural language processing and big language models.
And you think I will voluntarily use them in 2024 and they will be that good?
Do you use the autocomplete of Gmail?
Verily.
I just think that by July 2024, the autocomplete of Gmail or like those kind of things for writing blogs will be insane. I don't know. I've looked at your blog a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not always like thorough research about AI. So sometimes it's just like you blogging about things, right?
It's almost always just me blogging about things.
So if you blog about things, I know some people will just like use GPT-3 to like automate some of their writing. Like, oh, what are some good prompts? Some good like follow up for my story. Like if they're writing a novel, they could just even go in like AI Dungeon and like they autocomplete the thing and then they get like new ideas. This is like kind of hard, right? But it's still like 90% chance. I would take the odds. How much money are we betting? $100. I would take like a 10%. I would take like a 10% chance of winning 1K on this. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
So the question is like,
no, there's COVID.
It's fine. Wash your hands.
Cool.
But to be clear, so it has to be like one that I voluntarily use, but not intentionally not using it to win this bet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's too hard because how would I know, right? How would I know if I'm lying?
Well, it seems like if it was in fact that useful for my blog, I'm not going to not use it over like $1,000. I have a lot of blogging to do, you know.
Or we could just like look at like how productive is your blog and like how much more blogging has happened.
Well, I'll be honest.
Cool. Yeah. So forecasting is hard. And this is something that Yudkowsky points out in his tweets, is that if you want to predict something that will not happen in 2 years, it's very hard to come up with like concrete examples. Or at least like when you talk to like machine learning researchers, like, hey, what will not happen in 2 years? Like what benchmark will not be like saturated by new research? It's very hard to come up with one. But your research is about AI forecasting, right? And the question I have, and people on Twitter asked about, is do you communicate your like forecast timelines and surveys to like governments or like policymakers? Like, do people like read your paper?
I guess I don't personally try to communicate with governments directly in some sort of directed fashion. I mostly just put things on the internet and hope that they find their way to the people who might make use of them. There are a bunch of people who work in AI governance who I hope are more on that. Sometimes I talk to them about what sorts of things they would like to know.
The great thing is that those people have been having conversation with me, so I have new stuff on AI tech and governance coming up.
Oh, great.
About the thing you release on the internet, do you have like specific things you think people should read more, like your blog, your website, like papers people should like read first when looking at AI impacts?
As I'm currently working on trying to put the best case I can for being worried about AI risk up on AI impacts in a kind of organized fashion. I'm hoping that will be a good thing to look at, but it's not up yet.
Hopefully it will be up when the podcast is up. About your answer to Scott Alexander on slowing down AI progress, where should we go if we want to like look at it? Is it like mostly on Less Wrong, in AI impacts, or your blog?
My blog, World Spirit Sock Puppet, is the most likely place that it will be, and my guess is that I will also cross-post it to AI impacts and Less Wrong.
Awesome.
The EA forum.
So yeah, read Katja Grace. She's great. It's been a pleasure to have you, and hopefully we can do one more before job get automated.
Thank you.
Thank you.